Dear student, myself Ashrita from Department of Economics. So today's class we discuss about the third unit of monetary economics, that is inflation. So first I'm given a brief introduction about this chapter. So about inflation. So, inflation implies a persistent rise in the general price of level without corresponding rise in the level of output. It is also a phenomenon where too much money chases too few goods and services. Due to the various rigidities and immobilities in under the developing countries, too much money circulation cause an imbalance between the demand for their demand and their supply. So this situation results in a rise of price and the standard of living of wage earning class will get the adversely affected. So in the previous standard of level, the labor union existing demand for higher wages, which leads to an increase in the cost of the production. The price further increasing these process repeats. In this way, a vicious circle of rising price and increasing the cost continuously. So this process causes a lots of difficulties and unlimitedly over the takes development. So there are some definitions given by the different economists about the inflation in a different way. So let us consider a few of those defined. So first one is according to Professor Crowther, a state in which the value of money is falling, that is, price are rising. And according to Johnson, sustained or persistence rise in a price. And according to George, inflation is abnormal increase in a quality of the money. And next, according to Kerbor, uh, too much money chasing too few goods. So this is a brief introduction about the inflation. So from this definition, we can say the inflation is marketed and sustained rise in a general price level, resulting in a persisting fall in the purchasing power of a money. So, Cambridge economists, including Pigous and Keynes, has analyzed inflation as a phenomenon of full employment. So, according to Keynes, an inflation rise in the price level cannot take place before the point of full employment. So the price level will be rise only after the point of full employment has been reached. So this is the opinion of Keynes. So next we move on to the types of inflation. So on the different basic, economists have classified inflation into various types. A few important categorized are discussed under the below. So first one is on the basis of rise in a price level. So it is essential to understanding that a sustained rise in a price may be the various magnitudes according to inflation can be classified under the four heads. First one is creeping inflation. So it is a mid and the tolerable form of inflation. In this form of inflation, sustained rise in a price per annum will be 2 to 3% range. So this is not a dangerous form of inflation. And second one is walking inflation. It is a walking or trotting inflation when the rate of rising in a price is intermediate range of 3 to 6 per percent per annum. So, according to Professor Samuelson, he defined creeping and walking inflation into moderate inflation. So it is a situation where the rate of price rise is generally 3 times faster than the creeping inflation. So third one is running inflation. So running inflation is known as galloping inflation. So it is a dangerous form of inflation. So running inflation may recorded more than 100% rise in a prices over the decades. If it is not controlled, it leads to hyperinflation. So next, hyperinflation. It is a most form of inflation when the price rise is overly 1000% per annum. So it is called as hyperinflation. So it is seen in the Australia, Germany, Poland, Russia, and it is a witness hyperinflation in the walk of the World War First. So hyperinflation may leads to um, very crisis in an economy. So next, second, on the basis of level of employment, according to Professor Keynes, classified into inflation under the two heads of on the basis of level of employment. That is, first one is true inflation, second one is semi inflation. So first one is a rise in a price after the full employment is reduced is called as true inflation. In this case, a rise in a price is not accompanied by the increase in a production and employment. So second one is semi-inflation. According to Keynes, an inflation rise in the price level cannot take place before the point of full employment. So an expansion of money supply will not lead to rise in the price level so long as there are unemployed resources in the economy. So this type of situation is known as semi inflation. So next, third one is on the basis of control of inflation. So on the basis of control, we can classify inflation under the two heads. First one is open inflation and second one is suppressed or represent inflation. So first one is open inflation refers to type of inflation where the open market force determines the price level, that is demand force and supply force. So there will be not be any sort of government interference. It is a situation where there is a intercrypt rise in the price. So this is the first one, and second one is suppressant or represent inflation. It is a situation under which prices are prevented from rise up by the price control and the rationality. So this type of inflation is not good. So many authorities prefer open inflation to suffered inflation because once price control or other measures are removed, price will be rise faster than the previous period. So this type of inflation may encourage black marketing. So next, fourth one is on the basis of factor determining inflation. So on the basis of this, it can be classified under the four head. First one is deficit induced inflation. So especially after the Second World War, most of the underdeveloped countries resorted to deficit financing. So, inflation caused by the deficit financing undertaken by the government is called as deficit induced inflation. And second one is wage induced inflation. So, inflation caused by a rise in a general price level unmatched by the rise in a productivities of labor is called as wage reduced inflation. And fourth one is war induced inflation. During the time of war, expenditure increased tremendously and result in the hike in price level. So this type of inflation is called as war induced inflation. And fourth, profit induced inflation. During the time of inflation, there will be a very high rate of profit. So at the time, very high rate of profit, business people include in a black market activities, and they create artificially scarcity in the market. So this situation leads to inflation, and it is known as profit induced inflation. So next, on the basis of source of pressure. So on the basis of this, it has been discussed inflation under the three heads. One is demand pull inflation, second one is cost push inflation, and third one is structural inflation. So let us discuss the first one is demand pull inflation. So, inflation, which is caused by the excessive demand, is demand pull inflation. So, it is caused by an increase in a aggregate effective demand for the goods and services in the economy. So, it is directly outcome of an excess of aggregate demand over the aggregate supply of goods and services. So, this concept of demand pull inflation is explained by the diagram. So, we can see here a diagram. So, here horizontal axis representing a real national income, and vertical axis representing general price level. So in this diagram, the aggregate supply curve slope upward, and because completely inelastic at income level y 0, it is corresponding to the full employment level. It representing full employment level, and aggregate demand curve slope downward as shown in a diagram. When the aggregate demand curve shift from D0 to D1, the price level rise from P0 to P1. Here we can see in the diagram. But once the price level has rise, efforts are made to maintaining the expenditure at the original level in the real time. So this is a cause of aggregate demand curve to shift upward again, the causing the price level to the rise. Further, thus the continuous shift in the aggregate demand curve result in the price spiritual. So these are all the types of the inflation. So this is a cause the aggregate demand curve of shift upward again, the causing the price level to rise further. Thus the continuous shift in the aggregate demand curve result in a price spiritual. So it is be observed that a shift in the aggregate demand curve can arise as a result of an increase in a private as well as government expenditure. So it is caused by an increase in a government expenditure, which is facilitated by the increasing in the money supply. So when the commercial bank systems grants additional credit on this increasing demand is supported to the central bank. At the same time, it is a sequentially of event arising from the increased government expenditure financed by the money supply will be followed. And second one is cost push inflation. So cost push inflation is not due to the excessive aggregate demand, but it is caused by the increase in the production cost. So cost push inflation is generally caused by the three factor. So first one is an increased in a wage, second one is an increased in the profit margins, and third one is imposition of heavy commodity tax. So these three causes of the uh, cost push inflation. So the presence of above mentioned factor in the production process keeps pushing the cost factor. So it has been said the rise in a wage causing a rise in a price may in turn generate an inflationary spiritual because an increase in a price would motivate the workers to demand higher wage. It is known as a supply side of inflation. So it is shows remember that demand pull inflation and cost push inflation are not mutually exclusively concept. So demand pull inflation may soon leads to an economic into the cost push inflation, and the theory of inflation would be completed only the two side, that is demand side and the supply side, so are integrated to provide a explanation of the phenomena of the rise of price. So next, structural inflation. So the structural inflation these emphasized the possibility that even when there is no excess aggregate demand, price level may rise because of excess demand situation in the specific sector. So this rise in a wage rate can then spread to the sectors when there is no excess demand for the labor. So this can result in a wage rate. So rising in a specific sector, this rise in a wage rate can then spread it to the sectors where there is no excess demand for the labor. So here we complete the um, types of the inflation. So next we move on to the causes of inflation. So there are so many factors responsibly for the emergency of inflation. So there are important among the causes. So first one is war. The most important cause of inflation is war expenditure. So during the period of war, winning the war is the supreme objective of all the other interesting, including the domestic economic stability, are secondly. So next cause is natural calamities. So natural calamities like flood, earthquake, drought, these are all hit normally productive activities in the economy. So this leads to sacrifice the various types of production and their price increase. So the price may be temporary, but it suitable measures are not adopted immediately. So it is may soon result in the inflationary spiritual. And third one is cyclical factor. So modern capitalism is subject to the periodic fluctuation in level of economic activities. So boom and depression are feature of such economics. So at during the time period of boom economic activities is BRICS and general price level increasing as a result of higher income level. And fourth one is increase in a supply money. So inflation is a monetary phenomena. So expansion of supply of money beyond the normal requirement of the trade and industry is one of the cause responsibility for the inflation. And fifth one is economic development. So the developing countries like India, so inflationary pressures prevailing are a result of higher investment necessary for the quick economic development. And sixth one is deficit financing. Deficit financing additional amount of money will be brought into the circulation. In most of the underdeveloped countries, natural resources and human resources are not properly utilized due to the deficiency of the capital. So, at that time, can be done through the introduction of deficit financing. So, next, seventh one is devaluation of currency. So, to correct the adverse balance of payment situation, sometimes the government introducing measures like devaluation of currency. At the time when the currency of country devaluated or exported are increasing and imported are discouraged. So the reduced supply of goods within the countries brings a inflationary pressure into the economy. And eighth one is a dishonored of money. So in a country like India, people hoard money of meets a requirement of further. So when the money is brought into the circulation by the people, the supply of money is also increased. At the time of increase, the supply of money leads to increase in a demand for the goods and rise in the price of goods. So next, cost push factor. So some economists maintaining the price are not pulled by the demand but are pushed up by the increasing in the cost of production. So they are believed some economics. For instance, trade union pressures many result in a higher wages, pushing up the cost of production. So if wages increase without a corresponding increasing in all the labor productivities, we will have face the problem of inflation. And next, demand pull factor. So according to Wixon and Keynes, consider inflation as a situation in which aggregate demand for goods considered from a value of money offered is in a excess of the supply of goods at the privileged price. It is caused by an increase in the aggregate effective demand for the goods and services in the economy. So here I stop my class. In the next class we discuss the continue part. So thank you, student.